Are you kidding me? We have another airline crash. Luckily, nobody died in this one. So this is a Delta connection flight that crashed today in Canada at the Toronto Pearson International Airport. And people luckily were able to get out of the plane very quickly, but they got the fire put out very quickly also. So we're going to take a look at what was the likely cause of this crash. I mean, everybody's wondering, how can an airplane possibly end up upside down, belly up, on the runway? I have an answer for you.
We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down. Everybody, most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
Now that strange staticky echo that you hear is on the original video. That is not from me, so we couldn't do any better than what we got from the original source.
Everything, drop it! Come on! Don't take your video! That's on the way! On the way!
Now here's a video taken by a young gentleman who was on this plane as he was getting out, and he's filming some of the passengers coming out, and they didn't waste time, boy. They just spray that water right on there. Who cares if you're walking under it? They got to get that fire out. And it really wasn't that much. I mean, they got there very quick and got busy on it. And look at the wind blowing across. That really looks like ice on the runway. But anyway, you can see everybody just kind of calmly meandered out of the plane. There was 80 people total on the plane. There was 76 passengers and 4 crew. And then Ashley Zook was another passenger on the plane, and she shot this photo and this video.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God. I was just in a plane crash.
And this is another view from an airport security cam, and I hope somebody didn't get fired over this one like they did in the DCA crash. And you don't really see a whole lot, but you can sort of see the figure of the plane kind of coming down the runway, and the wings have come off and they've started to catch on fire. And then this other video here was shot from across the airport. And that is most likely the wings that are burning where the fuel tanks were. Because remember, the wings were ripped off of the plane. The plane did catch fire, but I don't believe that the smoke got that bad because the fire department was right there pretty quick. And as we saw in the previous video, they were already hosing it down, and it didn't seem like the smoke was that thick. And as you can see, this was shot by a passenger in another plane. You can see their jet engine right there in the lower left of the screen. So I don't know if this plane was coming in for a landing or if this plane was getting ready to take off. But either way, the passenger in this plane saw the smoke and thought to get video of it. This is Delta Connection Flight 4819, operated by Endeavour Air, and this is using a CRJ-900 aircraft. So this plane had crash landed in Canada's Toronto Pearson International Airport at around 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time here today on February 17th, 2025. And so this flight had originated in Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, call sign MSP. So the initial reports had indicated that there was no fatalities, thank God, and there was 18 people with injuries. That's as of the time that I uploaded this video. So a lot of us were already talking about that plane crash in Alaska last week where 10 people were killed in a small plane. And we were already going, what the heck? How many more crashes can we have? And now we have this one. So what could have caused this? I mean, this one's even more perplexing to many of us, right? Because we're wondering, what can make a plane end up on its roof like that when it just comes in for a landing? Well, this is not unprecedented. And so take a look at this. I want to show you this crash from 2 years ago in Somalia. So you were looking at a Jubba Airlines. This is a Fokker F-50. It's a turbo plane, but similar type things of what happened here. But it crash landed here in Mogadishu in July 18th, 2022, and it flipped over upon landing. And then, of course, a fire broke out. And very similar to what I think happened to the Delta Toronto is the wings, of course, are sheared off, and then most of the fire is where the wings are. Of course, there was still a little bit of fire on the plane, and they're hosing that down. But you can see most of the fire was where the wings are. So what made this plane flip over on the runway? Let's take a look. So here it is. It's very short, but basically it lands and the left wingtip hits the runway, and then the plane flips over. So why does it happen? Well, watch when it's landing what happens here. So it looks like, so I've slowed it down for you, 4x. So it looks like some wind gust might have picked up a little bit underneath the right side of it, and it made the left wingtip hit. Once that happens, the plane's going crazy. The right wing still wants to fly, and it ends up just flipping over. So you can see the mechanics of how this can happen. And then, of course, the fire started as soon as it stopped. And then, of course, wind shear is another possibility, too. In fact, some of the final reports coming out of Somalia were that the pilots experienced some low-altitude wind shear that made the plane kind of land a little bit hard on the runway. So they basically didn't have as much control as they thought they were going to have, and that made it flip over. Because all you have to do is have one wingtip touch the ground, and it's all over. Okay, fine. So what about our Delta connection crash? How does that Somalia crash apply here in Canada? Because supposedly we have much better radar, we know how to predict wind shear and all of that other thing. Surely that would have shown up, wouldn't it? Okay, so here's one thing that you need to keep in mind, and that is that the Bombardier CRJ-900, yeah, it's designed to handle probably some amount of wind. We don't really know what the exact limit is on that. I haven't done enough research yet to find that information. But I can tell you that the maximum demonstrated crosswind component for this CRJ-900 is 32 knots on a dry runway. So check out this one. Here's a CRJ coming in. And you can see it kind of bouncing around in some reasonably high winds. So let's see what wind it's at there. So we can see this pilot seemed to have handled it, but look, I mean, this thing was going sideways, and then look at this, at the last second, he'll go ahead and set it down pretty easily. And remember, this was a very proficient pilot. He's probably done this before, and this was on a very dry runway under ideal circumstances, most likely, compared to the icy runway that we had at the Toronto airport. So you just saw that pilot landing in a really windy situation there. But remember, he was in an ideal situation with a dry runway. What about up in Canada where it was icy and everything? So we don't know all of the conditions other than one of the reports said the wind was blowing at 40 miles per hour there at the runway. And that does seem like a lot to me. And of course, we don't know if the runway was icy or how much snow was on it or what was going on. Sometimes pilots they're pressured to land. If you don't land now, maybe there's going to be some bad weather coming in. So there's a lot of other factors there. Now, of course, the investigators will look into what all of the weather conditions were. They pull up every database known to mankind and pull up every single data point they can get their hands on to determine what the weather was right there at the field and whether or not the pilot should have landed or not. The problem that we have here is that at the time the plane landed, the winds supposedly were gusting up to about 40 miles an hour, which is about 35 knots, which is 3 knots more than what we saw was that maximum crosswind demonstration. So, I don't know. Are we near the limits? What do you guys think? Any experienced pilots out there that might want to chime in and let us know in the comments below? Do you think that is too much wind to land in with a CRJ-900 plane? Then I also wanted to show you some video here that Fox News got via Storyful. So they were showing the fire engines putting out the fire. Now, the passengers have all been evacuated already because you can see a fireman coming out of the plane there. But it looks like they were getting some more flare-ups underneath. So they're kind of like running out of there, and let's douse it again with some more foam. And then you can see all of the passengers were escorted away to safety. And the physics behind this still boggles the mind, but you can see what happens if you land rough and one of your wingtips touches the runway. All bets are off because then the wing will shear off. And then CNN posted this update, and I think this passenger's comment here sort of backs up my hypothesis. So in the center there, you can see it says, John Nelson told CNN he wasn't aware anything was wrong with the plane, calling it a typical flight between Minneapolis-St. Paul and Toronto, but said he did notice gusty winds and a lot of snow on the runway as they approached. When we hit, it was just a super hard. It hit the ground and the plane went sideways. And so it has a lot of parallels here to this crash that I showed you earlier 2 years ago in Mogadishu, Somalia, where the same type of thing happened. It went sideways, the wingtip hit the ground, and it started to flip over. Hey, so let us know in the comments down below what you think caused this crash. And if you haven't seen our videos from the DC crash, you can start up here by looking at this one. This was the one from last night, and of course we have a few others. And then after that, make sure you look at this other video here from the Philly Medjet, the one that crashed a couple of weeks ago. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see all of you on the next one.